Okay, members, we resume the sitting. Members, time for questions to the Minister for the Economy, which have been rescheduled from the 14th of February. Question 11 has been withdrawn. And I call Linda Dillon to ask the first question. Linda Dillon.
Question number 1.
I call the Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and can I thank you and the Business Committee for rescheduling these questions. It's appreciated. My department is helping to address the skills gap for engineering in Mid-Ulster with a range of skills programmes, including apprenticeships, assured skills, Skill Up, Skill Focus and Innovate Us. I would encourage employers to avail of my department's apprenticeship programmes, which play a key role in creating an effective and sustainable pipeline for skills development in the Mid-Ulster area and the Northern Ireland workforce as a whole. Latest published statistics show that Mid-Ulster has the highest number of higher-level apprentices per capita of any local government district in Northern Ireland. In response to the pandemic, my department's Apprenticeship Challenge Fund has supported work to create a new higher-level apprenticeship for the manufacturing sector, developed by the Manufacturing, Engineering Growth and Advancement Network in Mid-Ulster. This is currently in its first year and is delivered by Ulster University at the Magee campus. Latest figures show 136 apprentices participating on engineering frameworks at levels 2 and 3 in the Mid-Ulster area, with a further 53 apprentices participating on the Mechanical Services Engineering Framework, which covers plumbing. In addition, Economic Recovery Action Plan funding is enabling the delivery of up to 7 assured skills collaborative welding academies at South West College, developed with local engineering companies and offering 84 training places. Skills Focus offers industry-relevant Level 2 qualifications and above, while Innovate Us delivers upskilling for innovation in this sector. Skill Up, with a budget of £23 million over 3 years, supports free training linked to priority areas for future economic growth in Northern Ireland.
Supplementary, Linda Dillon.
I think there can be thank the Minister first for his answer, and I do appreciate that there are a high number of apprenticeships in Mid-Ulster, and I think that that's testament to the work that has been done by the engineering industry in my constituency of Mid-Ulster. However, every single engineering company that I've met with are still crying out for people with the required skills, even to the point where I met with one business who had someone who had taught themselves via YouTube how to use a machine. So I think that we really need now to be looking at a centre of excellence in Mid-Ulster for engineering apprenticeships, and companies would be more than happy to work with the department in order to deliver this.
Well, I think that the challenges that the member has expressed are challenges that are faced all over Northern Ireland. I am aware of the skills issues that we face right now. Of course, these aren't just unique to Northern Ireland. We're seeing this across the UK and the Republic of Ireland, and indeed further afield. I'm looking forward soon to be able to publish my skills strategy, which deals in the longer term with what we need to do to ensure that we have the skills in place, in addition to creating that culture of lifelong learning. In addition, I'm also pleased with the progress of the Assured Skills Academies to ensure that we are pushing our young people and making them aware of the opportunities that exist now and into the future. It's also why I've launched a careers review, because I want young people to be aware of the different options that are available. There's clearly a demand and a need here for this, and I want to make sure that we work together with businesses and with the universities and higher and further education colleges to make sure that there is the provision there that will actually make a difference. If she has a specific proposal that she would like to write to me about, I'll be more than happy to consider that.
I call Patsy McGlone.
Thanks very much to the Minister for his responses. Minister, you will know from the constituency that it's one of the high-end manufacturing constituencies, and a whole range and a plethora of very, very skilled workers. One of the things that I have always encountered, aside from the shortages, is the lack of connectivity. You've got FE colleges, you have some of the best schools anywhere in the area, but that joined up connectivity between business, between departments, and that has to take place in a much more coordinated way. Some of the companies are actually going and headhunting themselves from those schools. So is there any way between yourself and the Department for Education, or whomsoever, that much more coordinated approach is taken to that, please?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think that's why the careers review is so important, because that does look at how we can work better together, that schools have an understanding of the opportunities that exist for young people and how we can make sure that those pathways are known to our young people in schools. I think there actually has been an improved working together and collaboration between businesses, between the department and between the education providers. I think you see that actually through the Assured Skills Academies. I think they've been absolutely fantastic in businesses coming to us, identifying need, and us working with education providers to address that. Of course, there's always room for improvement, and I'll not be found wanting in making sure that can happen.
Peter Weir.
Thank you. Thank the Minister for the responses so far. Can I ask the Minister, in terms of the issue of upskilling, for his assessment of the importance of the Assured Skills programme, and what feedback has he had from companies in terms of the programme?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I've already indicated, I think the great benefit of the Assured Skills programme is the ability to bring together business and further and higher education, and my department to identify the needs that are there. And in terms of the specific question that he asked, I can say to the member, I have had businesses that have come to me, some major businesses that have invested in Northern Ireland, foreign direct investors that have come in here and have told me that they are reinvesting, and one of the reasons why they are doing that is because of the Assured Skills Academy. They have been highly successful. They have set out to, with an objective in mind, they've been able to achieve that, and as a result we have seen provision being met and need being met, and additional investment in jobs in Northern Ireland, and that's something I want to see continue beyond what's in my Economic Recovery Action Plan.
Stuart Dixon.
Thank you, Minister, for your answers so far. Minister, can I express my dismay at your recent decision to abandon all-age apprenticeships, and how important they would be in an area like Mid-Ulster and indeed across Northern Ireland in delivering the genuine skills that we need to deliver for these new and growing industries that require and are calling out for apprenticeships, regardless of the age of those that want to do that work?
Well, look, Mr. Speaker, I fully understand and I'm aware of the challenges that exist out there in terms of employers who need to get the skilled workers that they require. And you only have to look, I think, at the plethora of programmes that we have put in place that's actually what we're trying to do and actually trying to address. If there are specific issues that he has, if there is something that he thinks that we need to be doing that we're not, I'm happy to hear from that. This will all, of course, be further explored in the skills strategy that I am bringing forward, and I think that he will be pleased with the actions that we intend to progress on that.
Nicole Kelly Armstrong.
Number 2.
With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I wish to group questions 2 and 3, and with your permission, I wish to avail of the extra minute to answer this grouping. Project Stratum is a broadband intervention scheme that was allocated £165 million of public funding, £150 million of which was secured under the Confidence and Supply Agreement between the Democratic Unionist Party and the Conservative Party, and £15 million from the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. After a competitive tendering process, Fibrous Networks Limited was appointed as the contractor to deliver gigabit-capable broadband to over 76,000 premises using £165 million of public funding and their own substantial investment of more than £45 million. Network Build is on track to deliver gigabit-capable broadband infrastructure to those 76,000 properties by March 2024. My department has now secured an additional capital funding of £32 million to bring a further 8,500 premises into Project Stratum, again mainly in rural areas of Northern Ireland. The additional premises now include premises that were out of scope due to insignificant funding when the contract for Project Stratum was signed, as well as premises that were not considered for inclusion at that time due to anomalies in the pointer address database maintained by Land and Property Service. Now, as a result of this much-needed public intervention, some 85,000 eligible premises will now benefit from Project Stratum, meaning these homes and businesses will have access to gigabit-capable broadband, delivering the fastest speeds available to consumers. To date, Fibrus has completed infrastructure deployment work to over 22,000 premises. All scheduled builds in 7 areas for this quarter are on track to be delivered in line with deployment targets. More than 10,000 fibre poles have been planted and 2,000 kilometres of fibre cable installed, despite challenges to working conditions faced by the contractor and its subcontractors during the pandemic. The deployment of the new full fibre network infrastructure to reach all 85,000 premises now within Project Stratum will continue across 4 extended quarters of network build, with Fibrus Networks on target to complete deployment to some of the most hard-to-reach premises, included as part of the extended coverage plans by March 2025.
Kelly Armstrong, supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Minister, you've just mentioned there the number of poles that have gone up, and some of those hard-to-reach areas are areas that are in areas of outstanding natural beauty. Could you confirm if part of the contract with the Fibrus Network was to put those poles in AONI, or areas of outstanding natural beauty, underground as opposed to overground?
So, Fibrus Networks contact environmental bodies prior to every build phase of Project Stratum, as well as inviting them to the virtual community events that they host prior to build commencement. And Fibrus Networks use these events to explain their build plans, provide more detail on their approach, and provide contact information in the event that there are any issues with the network rollout. They also consult with various rural community networks, local political representatives and councils. Build letters are distributed to local residents by build teams, informing them of the work taking place, and if there are any queries, those should be dealt with promptly. And on-site meetings are also held with local residents and political representatives to resolve issues, for example, the visual impact of poles. So during build phases within the Mournes area, for example, Fibrus Networks held on-site meetings with local residents and political representatives to resolve issues, for example, the visual impact of poles. And maps produced at the low-level design stage contain details of poles infrastructure planned for public land considered an area of outstanding natural beauty, and details of the placement of the poles are then provided to the relevant council area with at least 28 days notice of Fibrus Networks' intent to commence works. If the member has a problem with individual poles, then I would encourage her to get in contact. However, that should have been done through the local councils for that consultation to take place. If it hasn't, I'm more than happy to chase that up for her.
Gemma Dolan.
I thank the Minister for that detailed answer. Minister, although it is deeply concerning that BT has chosen to hike its broadband prices when we're already in the midst of a cost of living crisis hitting thousands of workers and families, can you confirm if there are any price controls within the Project Stratum tender that prevents unfair price hikes like this for customers?
So, Mr. Speaker, I understand the concerns that people have around the cost of living crisis that we find ourselves in at this present moment in time. This scheme is helping to deliver broadband to those that don't currently have it. I think that is to be welcomed. In terms of the pricing schemes themselves, I would appreciate it if we get some more detail from the member about the specific area that she would be talking about. I can then take that forward and see what the issue is. But ultimately, this will, I hope, go in the direction where there will be competition in the areas that are going to be affected by Project Stratum, that will then help to keep the cost of broadband down. Ultimately, that competition is what will achieve that.
I call Deborah Erskine.
Thank you, and I thank the Minister for his answers so far. Project Stratum demonstrates what the DUP can deliver for people across Northern Ireland in every community and from every background when given the power to do so. I know the importance of better broadband in my constituency of Fermanagh and South Tyrone, while others try to diminish the importance of investment in rural areas. So can the Minister detail how vital this project has been, particularly for people and businesses in rural parts of Northern Ireland?
Well, Mr Speaker, absolutely I agree with what the member has said. It's absolutely right that my party prioritised this as an issue because we understand the importance of good broadband and of good connectivity. And I was disappointed to hear a Sinn Féin member say last week that he didn't believe it was the job of government to intervene in this way. And I have to say it was a bit shocking to hear such a pro-capitalist approach coming from Sinn Féin, but there's change afoot, it seems, from my point of view and my party's point of view, where there has been what I would consider a market failure in this way. I think it is right that we intervene, because look at the outcomes that we have been able to achieve as a result of this investment. 85,000 properties that previously didn't have access to broadband will now have access to that high-speed broadband, and that is something that I think should be welcomed and welcomed warmly. The member herself will know, coming from Fermanagh South Tyrone, of the issues that she has had and that other members have raised about the lack of broadband, and she will know the change that it makes. And in some cases, it is a game changer for businesses, for those that need access to the internet, but also in the home as well, because some people need it in the home for work reasons, for social and recreational reasons, and some need it for educational purposes as well. That's what we're able to deliver through the money that we have been able to secure. And for her own benefit, in Fermanagh and South Tyrone, as she will know by now, there were 13,572 properties that now have that access, or will soon have that access to broadband. The other benefit for us as well is that it makes Northern Ireland as a whole much more connected, and connectivity is repeatedly mentioned to me by investors and by businesses in Northern Ireland about being really key for economic growth and for the future, and that's what we have been able to secure and deliver through Project Stratum.
Call Justin McNulty.
Can I thank the Minister for his answers thus far. As a member for the predominantly rural constituency of Newry and Armagh, I recognise the critical importance of connectivity for high-speed broadband to all country families and businesses. Given that Sinn Féin are on record as questioning appearing to have serious reservations around the broadband connectivity to rural businesses and families, can the Minister give me an assurance that he remains committed to ensuring every family and every business in our rural communities is connected with high-speed broadband and demonstrating good value for public money?
Well, not only have I and my party said that we are concerned about access to broadband, but we've actually done something about it and we have delivered on it. And I'm delighted to say that in Mr McNulty's constituency, 9,061 additional properties will now have access to high-speed broadband that did not before. Those are businesses, and it will make them more efficient. It will help families. It will help school children who are doing their work from home. It will help those that are working from home. And I have to say, I really was struck by the comment from Mr O'Dowd last week. I think that is absolutely the wrong thing to question money going in to Project Stratum as a government intervention to help those hard-to-reach properties. I'm more than happy for the difficult questions to be asked about the process, about how it's being done. I'm here in this chamber today taking questions from members, but on the principle of this executive, through the confidence and supply agreement secured by my party, through that helping those that need it, I don't think that should be questioned at all. It's absolutely the right thing for us to help those people get access to broadband, and I make no apology for it.
I call Mike Nesbitt.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Minister. He'll be aware that at the Economy Committee last week, we were alerted to some disturbingly negative customer satisfaction reports with regard to Fibrus. What's the Minister's view?
Mr Speaker, unfortunately I haven't had time this week to listen back to the committee. I do look forward. I heard part of it. I haven't seen the entirety of it. If there are specific complaints, I'd be more than happy to look into those and to see what the issues are. There are 85,000 properties that are going to be affected by this. It may well be the case that at some stage some things go wrong and people aren't happy with that service. What I want to do is to help those people if there are problems that are being faced, and do what I can to support that. And I know that my department and Fibrus will do that as well. But again, if there are specific queries, please do raise those with us, and we'll be happy to take those forward. But I have been speaking to a number of people that have already been connected, and they are certainly content and happy with the service that they have provided. If there's others that aren't, I'll be more than happy to chase it up.
I call Caroline Killen.
Ricahar, question number 4.
Mr. Speaker, I understand the impact that rising energy prices are having on people in Northern Ireland, and from the very beginning of my time as Minister for the Economy, I have made it clear that affordability is front and centre of the strategy to achieve net zero by 2050. The strategy and the supporting action plan aim to develop policies and interventions to achieve affordable and stable energy prices. This will require reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, prices of which are inherently volatile and driven by factors outside of our control, improving the energy efficiency of our buildings to reduce the amount of energy that we use, including setting clear targets, standards and regulations, as well as providing support to consumers, and maximising the use of indigenous renewable resources to reduce the amount of carbon taxes that consumers pay on their energy bills. The energy strategy takes into account also the impact of the recent increases in energy prices and the impact that they're having on our citizens, with a focus on the measures that assist vulnerable consumers. These include establishing a one-stop shop to provide information, advice and support to consumers, as well as establishing a cross-departmental steering group led by the Department for Communities to develop and deliver actions to address fuel poverty.
Supplementary, Caroline Killen.
So, Minister, you outlined in your response to the question that you're concerned about obviously rising costs, and I think you'll not find a member in this Assembly who certainly isn't. But given that concern, you have said your department are providing a one-stop shop in conjunction with the cross-departmental response led by the Department for Communities. The Department for Communities have provided $57 million to help people heat their homes. What money is your department bringing forward, for example, in terms of retrofitting, which will hopefully reduce the bills that people face in their homes, particularly at this time?
Well, of course, Mr. Speaker, that is front and centre of the energy strategy, because I said from the start, as soon as I came into this office and was looking at the options for our energy strategy, I wanted to make sure that we were doing everything that we could to make sure that this was first and foremost affordable for people in Northern Ireland. I have constituents, the member will have constituents, we all do, who are struggling at this time, and I want to make sure that we put the support where it can be most useful. That's why I want to make sure, first of all, that we are putting our efforts in terms of energy efficiency, because the cheapest form of electricity is the one that you don't use. So we want to make sure that people are using as little as possible but still being able to heat their home, and that's where efficiency comes in to place. So that's why we are going to establish this one-stop shop really for everybody's energy needs, so that they will have the information, the advice, the support that they need to make those decisions that will ultimately help save them money. For some, that could be pointing them in the right direction in terms of renewable energy and energy that they can create themselves. For others, it will be efficiency measures. So that's where our focus is. You're already seeing the Energy Strategy Action Plan for this year, how we propose to take that forward. I don't want to encroach on other departments' responsibilities. Fuel poverty is a issue for the Department for Communities, but at the same time we are creating that cross-departmental group so that we can deliver on those actions as well to address fuel poverty.
Call Stephen Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Clearly, events between Russia and Ukraine could have an impact on energy markets, including the German Chancellor's decision to pull the plug on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline project. How concerned is the Minister that these events could cause further pain to local energy users here?
Well, the news today, the news over the last couple of days in terms of Ukraine, and also the news from the German Chancellor today, will inevitably lead to an increase in the cost of energy. In the UK, we don't depend overly heavily on Russian gas. Our supplies come from elsewhere, but it will have an impact on world markets. I think that's why I put into the energy strategy a focus on where we can, creating as much of our own energy as possible. And I think that's where we need to see further investment, because the longer we are reliant on fossil fuels, the longer we will be dependent upon the volatility that comes with fossil fuels. And in particular, I think we're well placed in Northern Ireland to take advantage of hydrogen and the opportunities that hydrogen will bring for our economy. So not only will that create jobs and investment, but at the same time create a more stable supply of energy, and that's why it's front and centre in the strategy.
Neil McLaughlin.
Thank you, Minister, for your answers so far. Minister, I just want to get back to the conversation regarding energy efficiencies. And as we all know, fuel poverty is very prevalent within our communities at the minute. You know, if the heat is going out the doors and windows of your home, particularly in our public housing stock, no amount of efficiencies can actually plug that gap and keep people's homes warm. So therefore, there has to be a certain amount of urgency on developing a programme to help support retrofitting. And while you have said that there are conversations happening and a one-stop shop, you know, is it with that sense of urgency that is currently required now to help support people in their most moment of need?
Absolutely there is. That's why I didn't just publish a strategy and leave it on the shelf, but what I have done is actually produced an action plan for this year, so that we can start to make the progress that we need. But ultimately this is an executive agreed energy strategy, and there will be responsibilities for nearly all, if not all, ministers in the Department for Communities and the Housing Executive will be key partners in addressing some of the issues that she has raised.
I call Jim Allister.
Isn't it the case, Minister, that energy bills could be reduced at a stroke by 5% if VAT was removed from household and other bills, but that is impossible because of the iniquitous protocol which subjects us to the EU's VAT regime, which itself dictates there must be a minimum 5% VAT charge?
Mr. Speaker, it's long been the case that EU regulations have stopped us from taking actions that we would like to take as an executive, as a UK government, and this is another example that the member has given us today. And I want to be able to provide as much support as I can to those who are struggling with energy prices at the minute. But what I don't want there to be is confusion or an inability for us to take action that would immediately help consumers, and that appears to be the problem with the protocol right now.
Call Alan Chambers.
Mr. Speaker, question 5.
Mr. Speaker, I am well aware of the increase in costs of many products coming into Northern Ireland from China and other global markets. I appreciate the challenges that this creates for our local businesses and consumers. Cost pressures are being driven by global factors such as shipping and logistics bottlenecks, reflecting a much stronger than expected economic rebound from the COVID-19 pandemic. While welcome, this has created inflationary pressure as supply chains strain to catch up with demand. Unfortunately, these global market forces are largely beyond the control of government and will take some time to rebalance. The current volatility in both availability and prices is causing some businesses to assess the resilience of their supply chains, including taking steps to source inputs closer to home. My officials continue to monitor the situation closely, including through engagement with the UK Government, business and industry stakeholders to understand the issues involved.
Supplementary, Alan Chambers.
Speaker, thank you for the answer, Minister. Minister, it's also a question, and you did touch on it, availability of products for wholesalers, for instance, to sell on to retail customers. Would your departmental officials commit to meeting trade representatives to discuss these difficulties being experienced by the wholesale trade?
So I just didn't pick up all of his question there, but if it's a request for a meeting with officials from interested business and industry stakeholders, I'm sure that can be arranged by my office, and I would encourage him to get in contact with the private office.
Okay, members, that concludes period for listener questions. Moving on to topical questions, and I call Claire Bailey.
Thank you, Speaker. Minister, it was good to hear you say there with regard to the energy strategy that you didn't want to produce a report and leave it sitting on the shelf. And it's been well over 2 years now since the Executive Parties agreed to close down the RHI scheme as part of the New Decade New Approach agreement. And I note that the public consultation on this closed way back in April 2021, yet no decision has been announced. Minister, has that been shelved?
Mr Speaker, on a number of occasions, I and indeed my predecessors have brought papers on the future of the RHI scheme or sought to get it onto the executive agenda. Unfortunately, that has not been possible.
Supplementary, Claire Bailey.
Can the Minister give any indication as to what the response to that consultation and the ministerial decision he would like to take would be if he can't get it at executive level?
Mr Speaker, this is a decision that will require executive approval. Anything on the future of the RHI scheme will require executive approval, and I'm disappointed that I haven't even been able to get it onto the agenda to discuss it.
Philip McQuiggan.
Ceann Comhairle. Minister, earlier this week, the Finance Minister outlined proposals on how match funding could be provided to projects funded under the European Social Fund to allow these to continue for the 2022-23 year. These projects support 1,700 jobs and serve 17,000 people in communities across the north, including my own constituency, by providing education, training, skills and employability support to some of our most vulnerable citizens. Minister, can I ask why you have rejected the Finance Minister's proposals?
Well, look, I want to thank the member for this question because it gives me an opportunity to provide some clarity on our plans to deliver these programmes next year. It seems to have gone unnoticed that I had already committed £6.3 million next year to support these projects. This represents a third of all match funding needed, so it is a sizable and significant contribution. I also welcome the announcement from the Communities Minister that she is committing £1.5 million to these projects. I know that the delay in making that announcement had caused many of them to fear for the future, so I'm glad that it's now been confirmed. In respect of the Finance Minister's plans announced here by him last week, I've already written back to the Finance Minister to explain why his proposals were simply not feasible. And it wasn't just my department that came to that conclusion. I understand other departments reached the same as me on those proposals. However, let me finish on a more positive note. Just this morning, my officials met with all of the projects. They will be following that up in the coming days with further detailed individual discussions. The message my officials gave this morning was that nobody will be left behind, and I'm happy to reassure this chamber that that is my position also. So I value the work that these organisations do, and I am already committed to supporting them, and I will support them.
Philip McQuiggan, supplementary.
Minister, you're quite right. These are vital programmes and projects, and you did indicate the unnerve and unease that the DUP pulling out of the executive and the uncertainty about this funding had caused people involved in these projects. I welcome what I seem to be hearing from the Minister, a commitment that these funding will be in full. I did note that the Communities Minister did support the Finance Minister's proposal, so in fact that could have been done. But can I ask the Minister just again to commit to this House that these projects will be funded in full for the next year?
So, Mr Speaker, I think first of all it's important that I set out that I had recognised the issues that were coming down the track. That's why I had submitted to the Finance Minister a bid for £5 million to allow this to continue. Unfortunately, he refused that within the draft budget, and that was very disappointing that it was not prioritised at this time. I can say to the member that I am committed to supporting these. I recognise the work that needs to be done. I will support them, and I want to ensure that these programmes can continue in April 2022, and I believe that's what we will do.
Call Tom Buchanan.
Mr Speaker, can I thank the Minister for the overall success of the High Street voucher scheme. However, the Minister will know that there was a small percentage, there was some problems with. Can he provide an update on progress being made to deliver to that small percentage who didn't receive their voucher or whose PIN failed to work?
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted with the success of the scheme. The overwhelming majority of those who applied were verified, and the overwhelming majority of those received their cards and spent their cards. And I know it's been a fantastic help to the High Street. And I want to thank Diane Dodds for the work that she did in setting up that scheme, because it has had a fantastic impact, and it put money directly into the hands of consumers who are able to go into businesses and spend more than the £100. And I hope when the member spent his £100 card, unless somebody else spent it for him, I hope that he added in some extra money there as well. But Mr. Speaker, I do recognise that there were some who were unable to either get their card or spend their card through no fault of their own. Those are the people that we are trying to help. And in addition, if there was at any time maladministration on behalf of the department or the card provider, those are also people that are going to be helped. And emails have already gone out to those affected, and the payments will be made in March or April of this year.
Supplementary, Tom Buchanan.
Thank you, and thank you for that, Minister. Can you give us any indication as to when this will finally be brought to a close?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I hope that we will have in place all of those that were affected very, very shortly, and then that spend can begin. This will not go on for a prolonged period of time. Once we have that information of those that are eligible for a remedy payment, we will send that information back to them to say that yes, they are verified. We'll give them the form to fill out, to put in their bank details, and then by March, April time, that will be back. And I hope that will be by the end of the scheme. We'll be able to have assisted those that weren't able to get their cards, and for those that did get their cards, we have a fantastic economic impact right across Northern Ireland.
Patrick McGlone.
Could I ask the Minister, please, what is the shortfall and the implications of the funding pause at Invest NI?
Well, Mr. Speaker, this issue had been raised this morning during the statement on the Invest NI review. It's certainly not the case that there has been a pause in terms of businesses are still being supported. Commitments that were made are still being honoured. But of course, as a result of the lack of a budget and the funding settlement that was due to come our way not being sufficient, there will need to be some prioritisation and analysis of the support that we can give. I hope that that can be rectified. I hope that we will have a better budgetary position so that we can support those businesses that are creating jobs and bringing investment to Northern Ireland.
Supplementary, Patrick McGlone.
Thanks very much to the Minister. And I see that's contingent upon the budget, and the budgetary implications of that might be something the Minister would want to speak about too. But could he be maybe just a wee bit more precise about any offers of funding that have either been delayed or withdrawn as a result of this pause?
Sorry, I think the Mayor was asking, have there been any offers of funding? No, at this stage, to the best of my knowledge, and I certainly haven't been told anything else, there has been nothing that has been withdrawn at this stage. All bids will be considered.
Paul Fruit.
Mr. Speaker, Minister, you recently visited the United Arab Emirates. What opportunities are there for Northern Ireland companies in the Middle East region?
There are huge opportunities in the Middle East region for Northern Ireland companies, and I think that we have seen that in our recent visit there. I met with a company that is providing waste management facilities in the Middle East, and I think that Northern Ireland is at the heart of innovation right now. You know through the 10X strategy what it is that we're doing and what it is that we are trying to achieve. The United Arab Emirates in particular is really important for us as a gateway through into the wider Middle East, and we're seeing huge changes taking place there, in particular in Saudi Arabia, which is really opening up to us in a way that hasn't been before. And one of the key sectors is actually mining equipment, the equipment that we make here. So a huge opportunity for Northern Ireland companies in that region.
Supplementary, Paul Fruit.
Mr. Speaker, and the Minister will know well that all politics is local. So can I ask the Minister, does his work there impact positively on any companies from the North Antrim area?
Yes, indeed, there were a couple of companies from the North Antrim area that I had met with and that Invest NI are working with in the Middle East. And I think actually it's worth mentioning at Gulf Food that I was at as well. We saw a huge demand and interest in dairy products in Northern Ireland, and I know that there are many dairy farmers in North Antrim that are also benefiting from that. So it's great to see the manufacturing industries doing really well and exports out to the Middle East. I would mention Wrightbus in particular. I had the pleasure of meeting with them recently, and I know that they have a lot of interest and a lot of work in the Middle East as well. So I'm happy to report to the House that there is a bright future for North Antrim businesses in the Middle East.
Niall Riley.
Minister, you'll be aware that university staff are currently on strike due to reductions in their pension entitlements and broken promises over what they are owed. And I think we'll all agree that no worker should ever have to take it to the picket line to secure fair working conditions. So will you join with me to encourage university management and pension fund managers to work with staff to find a solution?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the universities and further and higher education establishments are all autonomous institutions, and it's not something that I have direct control over. However, I have encouraged them to get to the table and to get a solution. I don't believe that this is good for anybody. It's not good for the education establishments, and it's certainly not good for our students and others who have seen enough disruption over the last number of years. So I urge everybody to come back to the table and get an agreement.
Supplementary, Aisling Riley.
Gurmayagat, and thanks for that answer. Minister, students are frustrated that their lecturers have had to take strike action, especially as they continue to pay fees and can't get access to lectures or teaching. Do you intend to raise the issue with the universities and encourage that solution so that this dispute can be can avoid further disruption? Thank you.
Certainly, if there is any role that I can play in that, I will be happy to do so. Ultimately, though, as I have said, it is an issue between the employers and ultimately the employees. But I would reiterate the point that she has made, that it's disruptive to those students, and like I say, they faced enough disruption already.
Liz Cummins.
Minister, just last week it was announced that sales from north to south had increased by 65%, a £3.6 million daily increase in the value of trade. Therefore, do you agree that no one has anything to fear from increase in trade north-south, which is in fact creating much more needed jobs?
Well, of course, the increase in trade in north-south isn't new trade. It's the diversion of trade that was previously between Great Britain and Northern Ireland as a direct result of the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's a change that others have had to make as a result of the protocol. It doesn't mean that it's better for them or cheaper for them, but it's just easier as a result of the protocol. So I think that's where our focus needs to be, on resolving these issues. I recently received figures to demonstrate the impact on food prices over the last number of years, and the impact that is having. Average food prices in Northern Ireland increased by 5% compared to a 13% decrease in Great Britain. That is a massive change between GB and Northern Ireland. Frictions in the Irish Sea have contributed to that, and that should be a cause for concern. So I hope that everybody in the House would want to join with me in ensuring that we deal with those frictions between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, because if we do, it'll help all of our constituents.
Supplementary, Liz Cummins.
Minister, the South are purchasing less products from Britain and are instead using supply lines here in the North, so certainly that is positive for us here in the North. So I'd like to ask then, how is your department supporting those local businesses to benefit from these new trading realities that we're seeing?
Well, Mr. Speaker, again, I think that she misses the important point in all of this, which is the frictions that exist between Great Britain and Northern Ireland are causing economic harm to Northern Ireland. This is part of the problem. She refuses to accept that that is an issue. I can take you to businesses right across Northern Ireland who are impacted by this, businesses that are having to take on additional staff to deal with the paperwork. I have complaints here about the problems that are being caused by the protocol. A 10 to 20% increase in cost costs directly attributable to the protocol. Letters from members on the other side of the House complaining about the checks that are taking place and the impact that it's having on their businesses. Goods and products that they can't get from Great Britain, the increase in the food prices that I have already mentioned. And remember, that is all held up and supported by £500 million worth of a trader support system that is due to go. So our focus should be on dealing with those issues, because they are the issues that are having a direct impact on our constituents.
Members' time is up. Members, please take your ease for a moment or two before we move on to the next question time.